The word of the day for the Orlando Magic, the word of training camp has been pace. We've talked about it before. Let's talk about it again and how it applies this season to this offense and in the first preseason game today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is October 7th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, it's all about pace. We're going to dive into the biggest change the Magic want to have happen to their offense. It's not about shooting, and how they applied it in their first preseason game, plus how Desmond Bane will affect this. We'll get to all that coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. You can make Locked On Magic even bigger part of your day by being one of our Orlando Magic dailies. That means you're listening Monday through Friday, sometimes on the weekends after games, and so much more. Check us out wherever you download podcasts, all part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Let's get some definitions out of the way first, because pace is a really, really difficult concept to pin down. And we're going to use it, and I say this every time we talk about pace, but we're going to use it in several different contexts here. Pace, if you're looking on NBA.com, the stat pace refers only to possessions per 48 minutes. And this kind of stat is helpful because it tells us generally how many possessions there's going to be in a game. And whether a team is getting a lot of possessions, they're, getting out in transition, they're getting these quick, theoretically easy baskets. And who is this kind of like plotting team that's getting deep into the shot clock and all that? The Magic want to improve this pace. Last year, they were last in the league in pace with 97. Let me make sure I have my numbers correct here. Excuse me. With 97 sorry, I got to find my numbers here. They were last year, they were last in the league in pace at like 97.8 possessions per 48 minutes. They did not score a lot. I'm just going to double check my numbers here. 96.5. There we go. 96.5%, 96.5 possessions per 48 minutes. Not very fast. The Magic were a slow kind of plodding team. Their offense just ran into the mud. 27th league in offensive rating, all the bad shooting and all that jazz. This is, even if the Magic play faster, there's still likely to be a quote-unquote slower pace team. And the reason for that is their defense is really good. Good defenses don't give up early shots. They make teams go deep into the shot clock. And the Magic are a physical team. They send a lot of teams to line. They don't get a lot of transition opportunities. They are a team that is going to play they're never going to play at a breakneck pace. They're not trying to get up and down the floor. They want their defense set. That is their biggest strength. But the Magic also want to get out and transition more. It's not like they don't want to abandon playing fast breaks. Last year, in addition to the Magic having the slowest pace in the league, the Magic were 25th in the league with 13.8 fast break points per game. They had the fifth fewest possessions in transition at 17.9 per game. And they scored only 1.11 points per possession in transition. According to data from Synergy, that was near the bottom of the league as well. There is a clear area to improve here and trying to pick up their pace, trying to just get easy baskets. The Magic were second in the league in opponent turnover rate. They forced, only Oklahoma City forced more turnovers as a function of their pace number of their possessions, as the Magic, which you would expect, Thunder were the best defensive team in the league. And Orlando just did not convert off of those easy baskets. So like a clear, like simple fix for the Magic's offense, which I mentioned last week, get out and transition more, run a little bit more, just don't get bogged down in the half court. But that's not the only way we can think of pace. It's not the only way. It's certainly not the way coaches think of pace. Coaches talk about pace as the speed in which you execute your offense. It's the timing of when you initiate your offense. It's getting over the timeline in 6-7 seconds. It's getting into your offense so you have more time to run stuff and wear down a defense and break it down. So possession count is not everything about pace. You can be a low possession team that plays fast. And teams that play fast are going to be able to make quicker decisions, have more time to make decisions, and have more time to execute and run an offense. You're not stuck kind of in the first thing that you do. If we think back to last year's Magic offense, it was slow in every definition of the word. It's not just the low possession count. It's catch the ball, wait for a screen to come. That's second and a half, 2 seconds. Initiate that action, and that's about it. Usually Paolo or Franz. There just wasn't a lot of dynamism to this offense. And so if there's a criticism that the Magic's offense was just slow and plodding, and of course it's bad, and forcing Paolo to take bad shots and Franz to take bad shots, you're not wrong. That criticism is fair, and it lands at Jamal Mosley's feet, but it also lands at the feet of personnel where the Magic just did not have enough guys last year who could create and run the kind of offense the Magic have been trying to run for 4 years, where they're empowering players to make decisions and be this kind of free-flowing offense that is just so hard to predict and sit on. That is something the Magic hope has changed. Bringing in a player like Desmond Bane, bringing in a player like Tyus Jones, gives the Magic 2 more players who are quality decision makers. Another year of Paolo Banchero, another year of Franz Wagner, a healthy Jalen Suggs. The Magic would argue, the potential for Jace Richardson, the potential for Anthony Black. Goga Batadze as a passer, Wendell Carter as a passer from the high post, even Mo Wagner to some extent. The Magic would argue that they have more playmakers and more decision makers now. They have more players capable of picking up the tempo, of helping the Magic just flow from one action to the next. And that's what the focus in training camp has been. Offensively, as much as we want to talk about the shooting and talk about the additions the Magic have made, I think the Magic are as much focused on creating this motion and movement, creating this intensity, creating these players and these decision makers who are going to find their man and find their guy and keep things moving. That's what the Magic want as much as anything. That's who the Magic want to be. That's what they want to build. That's their end goal. It's all about this pace. And it's all about having multiple decision makers. So you bring the ball up, you go straight into an action. You don't wait on anything. You get the ball moving quicker side to side. The Magic are also a low pass team that contributes a little bit to pace and speed. Although like a raw pass number doesn't really tell you much. But the Magic were a low pass team. They didn't move the ball very much. And so a big focus in this training camp has been, how do we pick up our pace? How do we get more possessions? How do we get out and transition more, use our defense to create offense? How do we create easier offense? And now that the Magic maybe, perhaps, have better personnel, have players who can make these decisions. Again, positions are fudgy with this team. That's not a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. If it works, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But positions are fudgy. Everybody is expected to do everything and work together. That's how the Magic pick up their pace. And that's, like, honestly, like I mentioned this several times over the last few episodes. That's the thing to watch offensively, not the shooting. The shooting's going to come. The shooting's going to be what it is. This pace of this offense, how quickly they're playing, that's the thing to watch. And that's the biggest thing that I was watching and noticing from the Magic's first preseason game. Let's dive into some numbers then to show how the Magic picked up their pace and just talk generally about what the Magic did on that game Saturday in Puerto Rico. Let's talk about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. With FanDuel, there are so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, and even follow the live lines during games. They got all the NBA futures and NBA preseason games, but don't bet on those because you're not a sicko. But they got NBA futures. You could bet whether the Magic will win the championship, win the NBA Cup, whether Jamal Mosley will be the coach of the year. The favorite to win coach of the year, last I checked, he was plus 600. That's 6-1 odds for him to win coach of the year. It makes watching any sport in any game even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, visit FanDuel.com, bet $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We're going to talk preseason stats. And again, I want to caution a few things before we dive into these numbers and think about what they reflect and what they mean. The first thing I want to say is do not overreact to anything in one preseason game, especially this first preseason game. We expected that it would be sloppy. I warned you it would be sloppy. It was very sloppy. There were a lot of turnovers. The Magic know they have to execute a lot better. They're not ready for a regular season game. They don't want games to count quite yet, and that's fine. That's okay. The mistakes the Magic largely made in this game are mistakes that, frankly, I can live with and expect them to improve on. Now, if they don't improve on them for Friday's game particularly, then we'll start talking and start saying, okay, there's some things we really got to be worried about. Neither here nor there. Let's not worry about it. Second, preseason stats are always a little fudgy. I tend to focus mostly on first half stats, and we'll talk first half stats here in a minute, because we know that's when the starters play. Rotations are weird. Magic played a full second unit. That lineup that Magic played in the second unit will never play meaningful minutes together. If there are starters on the floor, if there's a game on the line, that group will not be out there unless something very terrible has happened with this team. So I like, they struggled. There are concerns about why they struggled, but I'm not so concerned to say like, oh, this is a red flag. It's like, okay, like maybe Anthony Black isn't the player the Magic need him to be, for the long term. And again, one game, I'm not going to freak out. So let's wait for some trends before we draw some conclusions. But the biggest thing you probably noticed was that the Magic did indeed play a much more wide open offensive style. In fact, I would argue that first unit, the starting group especially, they were feeling themselves out, and they were there. Like, I would describe it as like they were dipping their toe in the waters a little bit in that first quarter. They came in for that second quarter stint, and they looked a lot more comfortable, a lot more aggressive. They looked like, okay, like we see the vision, we see how this works. And it's because the ball was moving quickly around the horn, quickly around the perimeter. They were attacking quickly. Everything just happened very, very fast. And that's exactly what we're talking about. The Magic didn't wait to make decisions. They made them quickly. They attacked. They reacted. And they found open shooters. They found open players. They made some really, really nice plays. So let's dive into like some of the basic numbers. As I mentioned, the Magic averaged 96.5 possessions per 48 minutes last year. In the preseason, they averaged 102.7. So we're going to go preseason to preseason here. And I say that mostly to note that preseason pace is always way up. There's a lot more possessions in a preseason game. There's usually a lot more turnovers. That creates more possessions. Possession counts are up during the preseason. So take some of these numbers with that kind of grain of salt. But the game on Saturday was played at a pace of 106.5 possessions per 48 minutes. That is the second highest possession game in the NBA, at least through Sunday. Second highest possession game in the NBA preseason. So again, like even compared to other teams, the Magic and the Heat, who also typically play a low possession count, they got up and down the floor. There's a lot of fast break opportunities, a lot of transition plays. And the first half, again, I mentioned first half stats matter a little bit more to me because we know the starters are in. The Magic got a pace of 107 possessions per 48 minutes. The four main starters, so again, remember the Magic kind of platoon their starters, and everyone except Tristan da Silva all played the same minutes together. That group had a pace of 107.2 possessions per 48 minutes. Even if we're saying like, okay, last year the Magic had played 6 more possessions per 48 minutes in the preseason than they did in the regular season, we're still talking about a gain of 4 possessions per 48 minutes. Even if you're making 50% of your shots, that's 4 more points per game, potentially 4 or 5 more points per game, just based off more possessions. Now, again, like I tend to deal in offensive rating, which neutralizes pace counts and possession counts, but the Magic indeed played faster. They got up and down the floor more. Observationally, they moved the ball quicker. Fast breaks were a different story. Orlando scored only 8 fast break points in the game against the Heat. So there's still work to do to be a little bit more efficient converting in transition. Some of it had to do with legs, like Paolo missed a transition layup, kind of short. So again, Miami scored on their fast break points, which is one of the reasons why they were able to stay in the lead and take control of that game, especially when that second unit came in. Every player on the Magic starting lineup had 1 turnover exactly. Those were 5 of the 18 turnovers the Magic had in the game. So again, like there's a lot to clean up. I'm not going to sit here and say the Magic were perfect on Saturday. Far from it. There's a lot of work to do. But if the goal was to kind of translate the speed and pace that the Magic say they're playing with in training camp, they certainly did that. Observationally, they did that. Statistically, they did that. And so I think there is something here. Again, at least something to keep an eye on, something to keep watching, something to say, okay, this is not crazy. This is not just talk. And look, for the most part, for the last 3-4 years, whenever the Magic say we're going to play faster, I think they genuinely wanted to. They just didn't. And so the question is, will this last? Is this something that's going to continue? Probably not to this extent. The Magic will pull the reins back on it, especially as they get closer to the regular season. I don't think the Magic are about to lead the league in pace. That's not the kind of game they want to play. Are they going to be last again? I would hope not. Are they going to be bottom 10? Quite possibly. And again, that's not necessarily dispositive to winning. You got to play the way that's best for you. You got to play the way that gives you the best chance to win. And look, Paolo is a very, the Magic didn't run a ton of ISOs for Paolo. They're going to add that to the mix. That slows the game down. They'll get Franz in. That'll change some things as well. But the Magic definitely did seem to speed themselves up. Like, I'll give it to them. Game 1 of this preseason, Orlando told us they were going to play faster. They played faster. Everything that I looked at numbers-wise, everything that I looked at watching the game-wise, there is definitely that focus on pace, and that has changed the Magic's offense in a not insignificant way, to use a double negative. Again, the question is, will this last? Is this something real, or is this just a preseason hiccup? We've seen those before. We've seen the Magic focus on things, deliver them in the preseason, deliver them even early in the season, and then fall back into bad habits. I think the Magic are genuinely trying to do something different on offense. I don't think this is the same offense and the same kind of scheme and the same kind of, some similar concepts for sure, but the Magic are trying an offensive overhaul here. And They had the starting group had a 120 offensive rating. They would say, and I would agree with them, defense needs to be better. Some fouling just being late on things, turnovers leading to transition points. They won their minutes, so the starters did their job. And again, like we're looking at smaller samples than normal for one game. But the Magic need to make this kind of thing stick. And that's, again, what we're going to be watching for Friday, whether the Magic are able to make this stick and become part of their identity. Desmond Bane is a big, big part of this. It's not just his shooting. The impact Desmond Bane had in his first game, we'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to my friends over at Monarch Money. Most people cannot name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally, feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. With Monarch Money, you can identify that you aren't saving as much as you thought. They help you notice an inefficient investment allocation and even discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Maximize investments, increase your savings rates, easily refinances with your partner or financial advisor. Keep a clear view of your financial health week to week and long term. That's what Monarch Money does, because being organized is the first step to control. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. Again, that's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. The biggest thing that I think everyone was waiting to see was how Desmond Bane would affect all of this. And, again, first preseason game, don't freak out. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. But Dez, I think, had an effect in a way that I don't think a lot of Magic fans would have expected. I think Magic fans expect him to be a really good shooter. And he shot 1 for 3 from 3, so not a bad shooting night. Not like the elite shooting night we're expecting, but not a bad shooting night for Desmond Bane at all. It'll get by. But that's not where Dez really impacted the game. It's A, the threat of his shooting, but B, his playmaking and his decision-making on the ball. Frankly, I'm someone who hasn't watched a ton of him, and I watched some passing clips and just got a feel for it, but like actually watching him and like studying him intently in a game, he is a really good on-ball attacker. The threat of his shooting opens up his driving lanes, and he is as unselfish as anyone else, trying to find guys and reading the defense really effectively. And when we talk again about pace, when we talk about how fast the Magic are playing, it's these quick decisions. It's this ability to make quick decisions that is going to determine success or failure. It's going to determine whether Dez delivers what the Magic are hoping or doesn't. And this is, again, the thing that unlocks the Magic's offense. Desmond Bane is going through a transition right now. So, I think it's fair to say like it's not going to all hit at once. But Bane said after practice on Monday that, he was kind of not taken aback. That's too powerful. But one of the biggest things he has to do is he has to establish his routine with this team. When he goes out to shoot, like where he likes to shoot from, the coach he works on, the biggest change for him switching teams is about rebuilding his routine and his habits as far as preparing for games. That first home game next Sunday is a big deal for him. He's going to have to learn the traffic pattern, how to get to the arena, what time to be at the arena, how to get his work in, like playing in the Kia Center for the first time. There's a lot of things to learn in that respect. But as Des put it, playing basketball is the easy part. Playing basketball is simple. It's just playing basketball. And the way the Magic are trying to play is to tap in to that simplicity. They're not trying to run these complicated plays and complicated sets. It's all about, you got the ball, make a read, make a play. We'll do actions on the side. We'll be there available 5 out to give you an outlet. But you're there to make a play. You're there just to hoop, to play basketball. And so that part is really simple, but that only works if you have a ton of players confident enough to make decisions, to make these passes, to make these plays, to make these reads. And so the earliest effect from Desmond Bane is not necessarily the spacing that comes from the shooting, although the team certainly feels that. While Des may be saying like, oh, I'm just hooping, I don't really need to adjust much. Other Magic players are like, oh man, we're adjusting to the amount of space we have, where to find Des, like that's going to be a big thing in the early part of the season, is just making sure the Magic know where they're supposed to be and know where where Des is, where everyone is, and just making sure they have that spacing down to make these plays when they cause the defense to collapse on them, or to not be shocked when they have the room to actually do things. But Des, I think, is going to have a bigger impact early on in this season with that playmaking and ball handling, because that allows, again, the Magic to play faster. That allows the Magic to get into their offense quicker, to keep the ball moving, to make sure it's not stagnant, because they have another guy who has the freedom, the confidence, and the ability to attack, to make things happen. That's what Desmond Bane does. That's been the early effect of Desmond Bane. It's not been about the shooting. It's about everything the shooting creates. And so the Magic could not run this offense with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, because Kentavious Caldwell-Pope took half a season to figure out, like, oh, when I get the ball, I need to attack. I can't just be settling for the three. If I take a 2-dribble pull-up, that's a good shot. One of KCP's best runs of last year was when he started doing that more. Desmond Bane is a different animal. It's a completely different animal, because that's part of his game. The three-point shot complements that part of his game. And that's where everything has changed for the Magic. Again, just one preseason game. It's not anything to count as gospel. It's still figuring this out and figuring out how everybody fits together. But I think you can tell there's a lot to like early on from the Magic, and a lot to think that this offense is finally going to change. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Emily, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the full Basically Alone podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can find me as well you can find us as well on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter at the Orlando Magic Hub at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day, go check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, all part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. That's good, dude, for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. By the way, not only is the offense running faster, our podcast is running faster. We're coming in at under 30 minutes. How about that? How about that for pace? It's a fast-paced episode of Locked On Magic that I'm stalling to get to that 30-minute mark because I'm kind of required to do that. But that's neither here nor there. We'll be back tomorrow on Locked On Magic. We'll recap what happened at practice on Tuesday, including talking a little bit about Wendell Carter's revival. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.